So I'll leave this up so you can kind of see what your reading first looks like. Okay. Stop. So we wanted to be here. It's a really good view on the camera.
Yeah.
And back to here.
Thank you.
Try to make that larger for you. Yeah, you're really clear right there.
Okay, that's fine, and that's fine, you can still drive it. But I want to get, how do I now get to shit emissions?
Says no, you see this. It should be running back.
Yeah.
So, it's 11.
Yeah. It's too hot. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll join so I make sure I know see what we're looking at.
Yeah, but me.
Yeah, so.
This is.
Yes, he's off.
Oh, I know.
This is.
He's done.
Why is the, why did we? Why is it?
Yes.
It's going there, and I said, I stopped.
Yeah, I think you need more chairs.
Thanks, yeah.
Big community event that everybody wanted.
I'll mind will be this.
Hey, you got two other big meetings right now.
There's a lot of us. Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No.
PTA meeting.
First PTA
Oh, BTS.
And CPD.
That's where.
Oh.
I know.
I mean, that's what I'm. You're probably past the. Like, stop that face.
Yeah, there's more people in town. Where I live. Yeah.
This was last weekend. Everything was going on. It's summer. I started voting notes, presentation. It's actually a presentation last month, some minor updates you might all. Is there an agenda for this meeting? Yeah.
Yeah.
Agenda?
It's just.
Okay.
So, anyways. No.
Those are- See, John's.
Yes, you can.
How is it? The long takes template and turn back. And then you.
Lucy?
That's. This meeting, this is.
I
This is Andrew.
Yeah.
Jerry.
And.
Go, Team Marco.
That's your meeting, right?
Yeah. Okay, all right. It is 6:01. Good evening, and it is Tuesday, August 27th. This is the joint MPAG and Celebration Residential Owners Association board meeting. you've noticed this because we will have a forum, but for all intents and purposes, this is MPAG's meeting to do your presentation to the community and to the board of directors. So this will need to verify to your forum,
You do that for
and the meeting was properly noticed.
it was.
Okay. We don't have an agenda, correct? Nothing to, all right. All yours, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, can I just do a sound check for those on Teams, if they can hear me? Because I know last time we had an issue with the volume. Somebody,
Yeah, you're coming in loud and clear. You're good.
thank you very much. Now, if you put everybody on mute. Now we got that. Good evening. My name is Joe Zelick, and I'm going to be presenting tonight on behalf of the Master Plan Advisory Group. The team, most of the team is seated right here to my left. Tonight, I'll have the opportunity and the pleasure to present. I'm presenting on behalf of the team that's here, so I may be saying the words, but the energy and the excitement and the information and the recommendations are as a result of this group of 8 people who have spent the last 8 months gathering data, listening to the community, and building a data-based plan for the future of celebration. So collectively, this group of 8 people, we live in just about every village within Celebration. We represent about 80 years worth of residency, and we represent ages, young, old, married, single, retired. So it's a good cross-section, but we believe, although we also believe that these are not, we're going to take you through the projects. It's not what this group of people thinks should the future of Celebration be. It's what we've heard, and all we are doing is translating it, consolidating it, putting some details around it, but the actual message is coming from the community. So with that, if it's okay, what I want to propose, and for your subject for the CROA board members, is I can go through the charts in about 40 minutes, 45 minutes with no interruptions. So we can do it that way and then have a discussion, or we can have a dialogue as we go through this chart. You all can decide, if you want to do it to your meeting.
Let's go ahead and see the whole presentation.
Yeah, okay. I think that would be fine. And you all have had in advance some information that was sent out to you. I'm going to go pretty quickly. So the only thing is if I'm going too fast and you say, hold on, Joe, what do you all mean by that bullet there? I will slow down, but I'll go a little fast. So just onto the agenda, I want to go through what our objectives are, what we considered in making our recommendations. We'll talk about the survey. That's a huge piece of data that we have. It's been well analyzed and documented by Krista at the end of the table there, who spent a considerable amount of time taking this the survey data, which we think will be useful, and it was useful to us. We'll talk about our recommendations that come in 2 phases, phase 1, 3 projects, phase 2, 3 projects. Then we'll talk about town hall and the community center, kind of separate from those 2 different phases. And then we'll talk about 1-page next steps and what we think is important to get out in the next 30, 60, 90, 120 days. So with that, we'll move on and talk a little bit about the objectives, kind of what you've seen before, what was stated in the resolution from last November by the CROA board to us, which is to develop a plan, talk about timetables. Specifically, we're going to talk about the town hall and what we think is a reasonable time frame to make some decisions there. Then we want to talk about this going forward. We don't want this meeting in this week to be the end of our work. We want this to be the end of one phase of our work, which is a very detailed white paper project plan study that's 104 plus pages that we will distribute later this week. But then we have talented people such as the gentleman walking in there, Mark, and others who have some very specific subject matter expertise and would like to help stay on and help drive some of these projects, obviously at the direction of the community and the CROA board. But it's not a handoff, it's a handoff. Now, how can we help you execute it as you deem appropriate? And then lastly, one of our objectives was to not work in a vacuum, but to work with partners And that's what we did. Moving on to the next page. So how did we go about our approach? This chart we've shown now 3 or 4 times in different community meetings. In order to develop our plan and the master strategic plan for celebration, there were 8 different areas that we looked at. So it's not, gee, I thought the survey said X, so aren't we doing that? Well, survey is very important, but starting at the top, we've held 2 community meetings. We did this very comprehensive survey where we got the highest participation rate of any survey, Warren, that's been done in the history of celebration at about 20% participation. We've looked over the hundreds of pages of prior plans and studies that have been done dating back to 2010. We've looked at some data that was provided to us through CCDD, through Dix Height, looking at some other communities and what sort of facilities and parks and ratios that they have. We went out and did some physical site assessments. This group had a fair amount of walking tours. We looked at budgets because obviously any recommendation, it's all going to be based in affordability and at least having an order of magnitude estimate as to what these projects would cost. And obviously we're very space constrained here at Celebration. And so when you see some of the projects, it's like, why did you put it there? Well, really, it may not have been our ideal location, but just given the size or the availability of space, that dictated our decisions. And then lastly is working with our partners. So that was the approach that we took. That's what we did. And now we're going to talk about that middle circle, which is our plan. Just for reference, because I did talk about the documents that we looked at. This is just a list of all the documents going back to 2010. For those of you who are aware, there's been 3 paid third-party strategic plan studies that have been done in the last decade. And what we think is really interesting and noteworthy and exciting about what we've done is, obviously third parties have a lot of expertise and knowledge and experience, but ours is a resident-based strategic plan. At least looking at all these documents, has not been done, not to the breadth of 100+ page plan that we are presenting this week. So we looked at lots of documents, but ours is a resident-led study, very exciting for us. The next area that was a consideration was the survey. And specifically, there's lots of data in the survey, and I can't do it justice in a few minutes, but I'll try by just a couple of highlights. One, as I mentioned, highest participation rate ever, 20%. We looked at the survey, it represented pretty well the age demographics, although it was a little heavier on the 55+ age residents responding. 63% of respondents have lived here for 7 or more years. And you can go down through, it's got a good cross-section between the different villages. And not surprisingly, consistent with the 2010, 14, 19, 21, and information, same projects came at the top of the list in terms of being recommended. Community center being in the top spot, followed by splash pads, pickleball, etc. I'll take you through that data on the next page. But community center was ranked number 1 in the last 2 surveys. And as you can expect or would guess, if we look at things like the trails and the playgrounds and the pools are clearly the most used facilities today. And as you would also expect, people would prefer their facilities and parks to be decentralized rather than central points. And one of the key drivers to people not using parks and facilities today is lack of maintenance, which is obviously. And then the last point, which is important, 70%, a third of the people said they don't want to pay any money for any new improvements. But 70% of the people said they will be willing to pay something. And that Chris is always giving me the exact data, but $129 was the average I always get the average means and medians. She's smarter than I am. But people are willing to pay a modest amount of money, doesn't make a difference, modest amount of money annually for some improved facilities and parks.
That 129 is a year.
Yearly, 120. So $10 a month. Okay, and again, if you look at the raw data, which you can see in the survey results, there are a lot of people, not a lot, a bunch of people wanted to pay $500 and a lot of people didn't want to pay anything right in between. So it was as you could expect, based upon where people lived and where they are in their life and their economic status, dictated that. So next, spending just a minute or two on the actual data. On the top of this chart is looking at the 2024 survey information, 2024 community meetings, 2019 survey, 2019 community meetings. And the key message, at least as we interpret it, is it's the same projects. The order varies. Community centers consistently won, whether or not it's in a survey or a meeting. Just to read the asterisk, full disclosure, in the 2024 community meeting, unlike the 2019 community meeting, we did not ask people to rank which projects were the most important. This ranking here is based on the number of comments that we collected. So you got to put quotes around that column. But what you can see is that just in general, the same projects continue to be in the top 5, order changing, but consistency. At the bottom of the chart shows for at least this survey for this year, community center, when we asked people to rank what they thought was important and whether or not it's a number 1 priority, number 2, number 3, and then the overall weighted ranking. So what's clear is the community center was in a distant first place. 83% of the people filled it in that I wanted either first, second, third, fourth, or fifth. So for reference, where you read it for the skate park, 38% of the people didn't even check the box, let alone rank it. So 83% of the people thought it was important, but you'd probably want to drop down to how many ranked number 1. 40% of the people said community center was number 1. 68% put it in the top 3. And then pickleball, lawn sports, and splash pads were basically, even though they're ranked there, they're basically the same, fairly similar numbers in terms of within the top 3, 46, 43, 42. Yes.
The Art Senior Center for 2019 survey, did that just fall off altogether in 2024? Or do you think that was
No.
bundling it into the community center?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And so, good question. We weren't perfect. Okay. They had it asked it separately. We didn't ask for it. Okay, because our thought process is if we're going to do a community center, we wanted next door, put a senior center and an arts center. Let's put it in one for cost reasons.
Mhm.
So yes, you interpreted that correctly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, unless there's any other questions, we're going to go to the next page and talk just briefly, top 5 most used amenities. As you can imagine, pools. We've got great pools, hiking trails, fitness centers. It's kind of funny because we don't have a lot of fitness centers, but people say it's the most, they ranked it as the top 5 used facilities. Playgrounds, obviously, and open space. And that open space, I think was interpreted many different ways by many people, whether or not it's CROA-based events downtown, using the open space there, or just the fields that are there for various events. So those are the top 5. And then the least 5 amenities, again, not a surprise for most of these, barbecue grills, bocce, sand volleyball are very important sports, but to a smaller group. Basketball, we had a lot of discussion of basketball. It's least used, and some of the discussion was, is it least used because there's only one court? You can't use it often because it's filled, as opposed to I'm not interested in it. And the dog park is very, very important, to a very certain group of people in town who have dogs. Majority of the people don't have dogs, so it's not used. And again, as we looked, at what we want to do and our vision based upon the data that we collected, The majority of the people may not use a majority of the things, but you can't necessarily use that logic to necessarily dictate decisions, because then you would never build anything unless 50% of people use it. So it's a question of, what is the, what are the priorities that we heard through the survey? What are the priorities that we heard at the community meetings? And what are the priorities, based on the other items in those eight circles? And again, also not a big surprise, but when we looked at a comparison to some of the metrics provided to us through the that CCDD is using, we don't have, the biggest gap. There's many gaps, but these are the 5 that have the largest gaps: pickleball courts, senior center, community center, baseball fields, and basketball courts. So as we looked at all this data, we then want to look through different lenses as to what is going to be our recommendations for projects. So one of the lenses is, what are the different community groups that would be using these facilities, whether or not they're teens, families, couples, singles, seniors. So again, that can't necessarily build something for everybody, but you want to look across the demographics of our community and ensure that we are at least looking through the lens of all of the constituent groups. Same way, we wanted to look at our celebration cornerstones. And I get, I was not, me personally, I think the group here is smarter than I am. They were familiar with the cornerstones. I really wasn't that familiar with them. I knew what the titles were. But, as we went and read, and I'm going to read you something that says, celebration, is interactions between friends and neighbors is the heartbeat of the community. So you all know that, wrote it. So it's the heartbeat of the community. And there are a variety of places where these interactions can occur. Okay. So do we really have, as the town has grown by 40% in the last 7 years, 40%, 40, right? Have we kept, the rate and pace of investing in additional facilities and parks commensurate with that population growth? And, and that's why we're pretty passionate about our recommendations, because we think that, interactions are the heartbeat of celebration. And, when we have, an issue with town hall, and when we have very few places now to meet inside, right? We've got some great places outside, but on the inside, we're lacking and will be lacking potentially for the next couple of years. So now we get into the recommendations, and I said they come in a couple different groupings. But one way, and Mark is the expert here, we looked at it, we talked about lenses, looking at it through the community groups, we looked at it, through, different lenses. But one of them is, if you look at the brains, I gotta see if I get this right. We have the brains, the heart, and the spirit of the community. And we say the brains is the civic, kind of the civic center. The heart is where you would go do your activities. And the spirit is where you would have social interactions. So as we looked, one of the way we looked at the projects that we're recommending is that they would fit in those different groups. And so here you can see civic is a remediation of town hall where the government would be, meetings, etc. And then socially, whether it's a community center, one large one, or as we're recommending, an expansion of Heritage Hall and the building of a multi-generational center in downtown. So a place for people to meet and interact. And then from an arts and sports perspective, and you can see we repeat the community center, but then we're recommending the multi-function courts, the civic corridor, lawn sports, splash pads, and parks enhancements. So that's as a result of looking at all the items on the left. Those are the projects, and then we kind of prioritize them into sooner and later, and then put off to the side, just in a different bucket, is town hall remediation. because obviously that's something that's urgent, that's in its own bucket. So those are the recommendations. And now what we'll do for the next 15 minutes or so is take you through each one of those projects. But I want to pause. Any questions from the CROA board before I continue? Okay. So next, if we look at phase one projects, first one is multi-function courts. And specifically, this is going up to on lot B, up in the civic corridor. As what we're recommending is the construction of 8 courts, multi-function courts that can be repurposed based upon demand. But initially, 4 would be for pickleball, 1 or 2 for basketball, 1 or 2 flex for either tennis, volleyball, etc. We would also add bathrooms and shade. You'll see for every one of the projects, you'll see a site plan coming up so that it fits. You'll see where parking is. You'll see that it kind of meets the zoning requirements unofficially and parking requirements unofficially. So we thought this is important, especially for, again, based upon the needs and what the community has said they would like through the community survey. So we've laid this out, and with every one of our projects along the bottom, we talk about justification and how it fits in based upon the cornerstones of the community, so that it meets, in this case, how we could introduce technology, community place, et cetera, as we go develop each one of these projects, or as we recommend that the community develop. So on the next page, you can see it'd be hard for most people to read, but it basically shows where the courts would be on lot B, where the parking would be. Go back for a second. Okay, what sports could be played there? Pickleball, basketball, badminton, volleyball, futsal, shaded spaces, and potentially some other sports would fit on those courts. And you go to the next slide, you can see, just what that would look like in terms of being able to fit, whether or not it's basketball or and how those would be laid out. So again, what we tried to lay out is what is possible. What you all decide to do is fine, but what is possible? It is possible to put this amount of courts there. It is possible to have parking. It is possible for them to do multifunction. Okay, and so this is the possibilities. And I think one of the themes that, and I know Alec was always on, this is what's possible. This whole plan is, this is a vision as to what we think is possible for celebration. Okay, and so does it have to be every exact thing as laid out? No, of course not, but it's a vision, and we think it's an important vision. And again, it's not the vision that we think is important, but what we heard from the community. Next is splash pads. Splash pads been talked about since 2010. If you go back to the 2014 master plan, they had 2 splash pads in there. And here we are, 10 years later, we don't have any splash pads per se. It's a gathering place, to socialize. It's family friendly, you cool off. It's a central location. It would be down in Lakeside Park. I'll show you some exactly where it would be. And we just think it's something that can be done quickly, relatively cheaply, and high impact, because some of these projects we know will take years and years, but this is one where we've if we had to pick one, this would be one that'd be more towards the top of the list, only because of its speed and affordability. So if we go look at the next page, you can see that it's would be located. That's fine. This would be located at Lakeside Park. Let me just keep looking. There. So right where the kiddie pool is, at the on the side, at the bottom side. Click one more time, I think. One more time. There we go. So there's I can't read it, but I think it's about 50 feet by 80 feet. So you wouldn't need to cut down any trees. You wanted that the existing footprint. We looked at splash pads in Winter Garden, in Claremont, and other locations that are very nice, can fit in there. The plumbing is there. So it's still obviously would take a bunch of work to get it there, but it's behind a car reader. So it's would be for residents only. So there's a lot of things that are very attractive about this location, and we're excited to recommend it. The next are parks enhancements. This group spent a lot of time physically visiting all the different parks, looking at the survey data, et cetera. And we're recommending a total of 11 different projects. So all the projects don't need to be done now. You could do a few now, a few later, but there's a total of 11 of them. That's North Village, East Village, Lakeside, Spring Park, Artisan Park. And I'll take you briefly through each one of those. They fall under 4 themes in general: shade, technology, seating, and bathrooms. Not every one has all 4 of those, but those are, so we're not recommending anything in general other than those 4. There's a couple of exceptions. And some, not having bathrooms in some of our parks and remote locations is, obviously a need. And so we've looked at that, and through the work that we've done, we're going to show you site plans as to where that could be. So with that, we'll start North Village, where we talked about adding shade and technology and seating to the current playground, doing a refresh to the meeting room, and later on, there's 1 or 2 more recommendations for North Village when we talk about some of this, adding some lawn sports there. If we look at East Lawn, same thing, bathrooms, pavilion, and shade to the East Lawn parks. We go to Lakeside, it's freshening up, enhancing the current Jones room, and kind of punching up the technology and kind of just investing in that. And that may be something that may go higher on the list depending upon the timetable of the remediation of Town Hall to make that more attractive and usable for various functions. If we go to Artisan Park, so this is one of the exceptions, which is recommending a playground. That's been talked about for a while, but a playground along with new bathrooms and other enhancements at the current amphitheater location. Okay, now we're going to go, so those 3 projects, and we'll talk about the timing of them a little bit towards the recommendations, but that's those 3, 2025 through 2027. And if you add them up, we're going to show you when we talk about money, how much we think is the site plans, the construction, furniture and fixtures, contingency, how much we think is the annual maintenance, and how much will need to be put aside for annual reserves so they're properly reserved. But just in general, that first grouping is somewhere between $2.5 to $3 million. And that's if you do a majority of the parks enhancements. So now I want to look at the phase 2 projects, which as you can see are 2027 to 2030. And since you didn't really mean 2027, could be 2028, sure. But it's just more immediate versus later. And I know we had a discussion, you all had a discussion at the prior meeting about, how to fund some of these projects. And I'm sure maybe we'll have a discussion at a later point on that. So one of the first projects we talked about in phase 2 is enhancing the current building and facilities at Heritage Hall. And basically, I think as Mark has laid out this nice plan, it's basically taking Heritage Hall and making it look a little bit more like Artisan Park, the same physical footprint. So adding, a gym, adding perhaps some catering and adding some meeting rooms to that facility. It could be up to 10,000 feet. I think in the budget, we've said 5,000 feet, but it can be, you can scale it. And we've got, one of the things that we've done with almost anything is we've made it, like in this case, 10,000. Okay, if it was that big, would it fit? Yes, okay, so then therefore 5,000 feet. But if you wanted to go all in, 10,000 feet, it would fit you wouldn't have to do anything to the current updates to the playground or touch anything else that's being done. It would fit. Okay. It fits on existing green space without interrupting anything else. And you'll see that on the next page. But we think it's important, as we look at that part of the community, being underserved from everything I just mentioned, whether that's meeting rooms, fitness rooms. And the challenge you all will have is as you look at a community center in a centralized location that's large versus decentralized, doing the two projects we have, is, do you do all three? Do you do the decentralized first? Those are all kind of puzzle pieces. But what we laid out here, as Alec has reminded me, what's possible? What's possible is you could put in an appropriate community center and these smaller hubs in different locations. And when you look at a village, and when you look at a town village of Celebration, with 14,000 plus people, you can make the argument you should be doing all of that, which is what we're.
And real quick, so
Yeah.
parking with Heritage Hall, I know parking has always come up
Okay.
in every single one.
Well, you're 2 for 2 for the good questions. So for every recommendation, we have a parking solution. Here it gets an asterisk.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, it gets the asterisk. All the others, you'll see splashback, they're all marked, got little parking spaces. Here, we would have to go get a variance or have some discussions with the community because it would require on-street parking and that impacts the community and the neighbors. So it gets a little more complicated. Okay. Just what that would look like. If you look, it's going to be a little harder to read here, but we would add, as I said, meeting rooms, gym facilities, catering, and basically it's adding 3 buildings. One in front of the current playground on the top of the chart, a section in front of the current Heritage Hall, and then something to the left. Yes.
It's really is one building, but it's exactly this footprint set back the same distance off the road that this is. So literally Artisan Park, this building fits there. And you can see how much space is left. So it gets rid of green space, but it still has the parking area that this does. So I did want to point that out. It's still scalable. To not go on it, stays away from the,
Is that this building, like later on?
yes.
Okay.
Slightly modified, but no, it's this building.
So it's
The part is heritage now.
That light green.
It's destroyed.
Right. But
It's there next to it.
yet what's on the bottom on that side, that's like next to the sidewalk and that parking spot.
It all fits.
It does?
This is all.
This is
The existing is right here. Yeah, everything coming towards the street.
Yes. This
Okay.
So that cross-shaped building is Heritage Hall, so you're taking off the front entry to it.
Yes.
And then integrating that with the new building.
I did not say that properly first time around. Thank you, Mark. So anyway, that's what's possible. It fits. It meets a lot of needs. And so it's clearly something that we think. And again, it's scalable up to 10,000 square feet and as a variety of the functions listed here. Lawn sports. As we looked at lawn sports, we looked at a variety of different lawn sports. And what we are recommending at this point is enhancing or adding to bocce, the current bocce courts, which I believe are that way. Okay, is enhancing those to make them regulation length. Adding lawn bowling in North Village, which could also be here depending upon, we get bids, look at the cost, it may be cheaper to put both here. And cornhole, which would be behind Heritage Hall.
Yeah, actually, the bocce is currently down there, but it is not anywhere near regulation size, about half the size it should be. So it's actually moving it to Heritage.
Oh, I'm sorry. See that?
Part of the backfield that off to the side, so you can actually get a full-size court in. And then also some of these other things. And using the bigger field that we'll see it off the towards the back of North Village for the larger people.
So just talks a little bit about lawn sports, and specifically, what we would do at Green Park, which is, for those of you who aren't familiar with Green Park is, it's,
East Lawn.
East Lawn, is, for their adding restrooms, storage, pavilion, to the existing facility that's there. Next page.
One more interruption on that one.
Yeah.
There is a lack of just meeting rooms around to have any kind of smaller meetings, Scout or anything similar. So the thought was with that pavilion, potentially making that a meeting room space. So a smaller space is probably about the size of this area, instead of an open pavilion, but still have open pavilion space around it, but have bathrooms with it as well.
So again, it's what's possible. We think you can build that in the area that's on the prior chart, right in the corner of, right, as you can see on the right side, right in there at the end. Again, not a lot of square footage, but could meet some needs. And currently, I know, you know, I've been there with my children, you know, there's no bathroom. Right? So next, North Village. We talked about adding lawn bowling there. And as I mentioned, when we were talking about enhancements to the parks, I mentioned there were two other projects that we added on this page, which is additional shade and picnic tables and electricity at the, what do you call that? Is that the north side of the park? It's the,
It's north of the.
it's at the farthest end, right, where the open pavilion is at the bottom right. So again, these are modest investments, but we try to look to, you know, creating some additional enhancements in each one of the villages, and this is what we're recommending for North Village. At Spring Park, as Mark corrected me, moving the bocce courts, adding cornhole, updating the pavilions, no changes to the playground, as you can see. And then, you know, on the bottom is also put there for scale to see the recommendations for enhancing and adding to Heritage Hall. So that's what this campus would then look like at the end of phase 2. Okay. Next is very important, you know, as we looked at, you know, at places right now, whether or not it's, as Mark mentioned, whether it's Boy Scouts, whether or not it's for our teens, whether or not it's for Scouting America, whether or not it's for people who go play card games, is having a center, because we originally called it the Teen Center, then we said, okay, we'll call it the Senior Center, and then we said, wait a second, we don't want to, we make sure that there are programs and things to attract different age groups. So what we ended up saying would be a multi-generational. It's not a huge footprint. It's 3,000 square feet and 3,200 square feet. And again, there's not a perfect location for this because somebody may say, oh, I don't like putting it there because it means we have to move some things around. But you'll see on the next page, that it would be downtown next to, you know, kind of in between Columbia Restaurant as you come towards the Jones Room and the facilities there at the Great Lawn. And those are three rooms in one connected building, you know, for play, for activity, study, etc. And it physically fits there. Could you also make it an attachment to the existing building? Sure. You know, each one will have pros and cons to it, but there's space there. There's parking there. It's centrally located, and it gives, you know, if families, you know, having a meal downtown, the children could go play at the teen center, you know, in between, you know, it creates a hub of activity down there right now. And because if you go down there, as I'm sure most of you do, I know, on nighttime, a lot of activity down there, but there's just a lot of people, you know, standing outside. Yeah.
So all of your plans for Lakeside, Heritage, and North Village,
Yes.
the restrooms will not be affected. There's no change in the footprint of the restrooms that are already there. Right? So You're showing the green building at Lakeside, the restrooms by the pool will still be the restrooms by the pool.
Yes,
No, I've added some in the footprint.
it would be
So-
incremental.
No, incremental.
Incremental.
We're not touching that. The pool still has
Oh, once
the
there.
pool still has a pool, and then there would be restrooms inside this facility, which would be behind the car,
That's what I want to know.
as we
Thank
begin, yes. All right, so anyway, yeah, there you can see it, playrooms, activity rooms, we'll go back. And again, we're somewhat space constrained downtown, but that's just a great location, we think, to add facilities and to reach, a majority of those different groups that we talked about, because there is, and currently won't be in the foreseeable future, anything for our teens or for our seniors, and others, families, et cetera, to be able to go do things. So could you rent that out if you wanted to? Sure, you could do a lot of different, you could generate revenue, if someone wants it for parties or weddings or whatever, because it will have a patio at the back. So that could be, could also be a source of revenue. But the purpose really here is to fulfill that need. We talked about social interaction, right? And for neighbors and friends to be able to go meet somewhere, so anyway, that's it for the multi-generational center. And I said 40 minutes and at 10 minutes. So town hall remediation. So I just got really two more sections, town hall.
You're fine.
We're not going anywhere.
So town hall, we didn't spend a lot of time talking about how we got to where we got to, because that's just not helpful, although there could be some lessons learned from perhaps, appropriate reserves and whatever. We went back and looked at 2014. The 2014 said, within the next 10 years, we've got to do investments needed for town hall. So it's been known, but for a variety of reasons, we are where we are. So that's all we care about. We're here. What do we do? Okay, and we know there's been a lot of activity lately in terms of working with design companies to go get plans to decide, and you'll see the schedule on the next page. So the key points here is one, we believe is a sense of urgency, which I believe everybody would agree with. And then two is increased communications as to what, as we get to those steps in the plan, is to make sure the community knows what the next steps are and where we are, right? Because that's important, right? So as we get to that stage later this year, when it's a build or remediate decision that's made, that gets communicated in a timely manner. So let's go to the next page. So this is a schedule that we developed that's based upon our knowledge of what's going on. It's probably not right, but it's probably directionally okay. And the key point we want to start with is, if everything goes well, we believe we're still sometime in 2026 before we would have a remediated town hall done. Sign outside town hall, since it's temporarily relocated. Okay, so that's what my communication is temporary. But as soon as we know, and this would say, if everything went well, if everything, boom, 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 then, you would be able to, you would all would be able to make a no-go decision by year end as to build or remediate. And that would just take, some very aggressive, scheduling and planning and decision making, because it's a hard decision, and obviously finance is playing into it, all sorts of things back to it. But if that decision is made to remediate, then we believe, you get the competitive bids in by middle of next year, construction would start, in mid-year to remediate, and then 9 to 12 months later, or sooner or later, we're back in to the current facilities. So that's speaking to a bunch of experts on this side of the table and some other people. This is what we think is a plan, and you all will create the plan. But this is at least what we think is reasonable in terms of giving appropriate time to allow us to get back into town hall, within the next 18+ months.
You walked through the 2.5 million. What specifically, how did we get to that? As kind of the
Starting.
What's up?
Starting.
Sorry.
Yeah, Rabbi, there was a lot of discussion as to whether to even put that number on a chart,
Yeah,
okay?
that's up to you what the tipping point
No,
is.
no, I mean,
Yeah, at some point, when you get anywhere above that, you may as well tear it down, and build a new building, and that's where it comes in. Good news is the study is kicked off. We'll know pretty much, it could match this. You'll know by year's end easily, which way to go with it. The walkthrough was good. Optimistic, that, well, I'd say the building will find out. But when the cost gets too much, is it worth sinking a lot of money into a building that is 25 years old already? We're building a new one. Can you extend the life of it good enough that it's worthwhile spending much more at some point when for just not that much, for an amount more than that, you can have a brand new building exactly what you want.
So based on market condition analysis of what it costs to build a new, right, that's that's where the 2.5.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna have to do that again at these certain decision points
Right.
to say, are we still in that condition, right? You'd have to test the market and understand what the cost is.
Right.
2.5 could be 3.5 if things go sky, or like could go south.
And then in addition to that financial discussion, which is very important, is the timeframe discussion. Because if you were going to, remediate and you would get a schedule and that take ballpark 9 months, and to build new would take 18 months, then that'd be another factor for you all to consider, right? And then useful life of the building, new versus remediating an old building. And so there's a whole bunch of variables that would be in there. Step one, though, is what you're on track to go do now, which is to get the data to help you make that decision.
There's a lot of planning aside from one line and a couple boxes.
Yeah.
Right? There's phasing you can go through. There's a lot of different options.
The timeline can be shortened quite a bit. So if the building can be saved and if the exterior can be truly fixed without it costing too much, you can shorten this timeline quite a bit. Once we get to the point where construction starts.
I think the important piece here, though, is timely decision making, right? As information comes in, that'll be presented to you all, and we've got to be quick on our analysis. Otherwise, this explodes and goes off the page.
So what's that timeline for this building? What's the timeline from architectural contract to like 90% CVs? What's for this scope?
It's on there.
Oh,
So
it is in the details?
we
Okay.
got 90% CDs in February.
But when is the contract with the architect?
I think you
Well,
did
you've
a
already
condition
done that.
assessment review, which was just recently done. Sorry, it'll be complete, I think, in a couple weeks.
They just now started looking at it. So it's up to their schedule. What we've done in this first phase is take it to design, get a number for you.
Oh, so this is based on what we currently have?
It's informed by the
Yes.
dates that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if you decide to go, it's on schedule to have drawings done early next year to keep them moving.
Okay. That's what I was
If
wondering.
you find out after
Starting
this
point and
phase-
durations based on their schedule values.
This is not a new build. This is the.
Right.
So right now it's moving okay. And with that schematic pricing, because now it does include mechanical systems, plumbing, electrical, all those updates, you'll have a much more accurate price with what fix it after this package. Get somebody to throw an estimate at it. It will be in the ballpark. They'll let you know which way to go. And then decide to go forward.
if this comes back over to it, where do we come back to MPAG on that? You consider what would have for the next step?
That's where
Yes.
it's thoughts.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll discuss that one.
And that's.
Yeah.
Right.
2.5 million ventures.
So one of the questions that I had was the remediation point of this puts us back to where we are at today, correct? So where the building was before it broke, no?
No,
So I think what would be helpful for me to understand is, I think that needs to be, the need for the building may differ depending on kind of which direction we go, because we want to make sure that when we're making a decision on how to move forward, we're assuming that the anticipated need based on the plan of that building is accurate. So in other words, if you assume that there would still be this amount of square footage of meeting space, this amount of office space, that sort of thing, this would meet the needs of the plan if you continue moving forward. If you don't do this, then we're gonna have a hole. And I think that that's helpful.
Well, this, as we noted earlier, this is the civic portion.
This is the civic portion.
Just civic portion.
So this exists for that function. And I think that included in the proposal that you all received is a reprogramming option,
Right.
to take a look at the functionality of the interior.
100%. So it's in there, if you move forward to take a look at everything. Obviously, the office side, the administrative side, then look at the meeting rooms to truly update them, make them more functional for civic uses. Our goal is to get the physical activity classes out of there and somewhere else so that you don't have those things that cause noise and kind of make it hard to do anything else. But or all these meetings, all the sub meetings of every group, other outside groups that want to meet in there, that it's talking and self-defense, it can reside in this and create spaces that are right for that and reimagining it. The office side, it's probably updating lighting, going through the furniture systems, get it all to work better for the management group. The other side, it's really taking a look at those meeting spaces, right sizing them, getting technology there that works. So that will all be in there. But what you first need to know is, can the shelf be saved? Can mechanical systems solve that for? Then decide to move forward.
I think, Eric, to answer your question, if this doesn't exist, then that civic function of the plan
Needs to go somewhere.
needs to find.
Yeah, okay, that was
It's
my,
up in
Yes.
the bigger
it
community
is
center.
something that we need to figure out somewhere else to put it. Because I think that that's something that we don't have a choice not to do something. I think that that's where I sit with this. I think that we either need to fix the darn thing or we're gonna have a hole. It's not like if we say, we're just gonna leave that and it's gonna be open space and we're gonna solve it by building all these other things. We're still gonna have a problem. You still need that space there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we did look at, when we were doing our site visits and planning and analyzing. Okay, well, could you take that existing footprint and do civic and social? Could you put a second floor? Could you blow it out? And it just really,
It's a weird space.
it's just it's a weird space. It's got some, and it would have both of them and neither would be great.
Right.
So if you're gonna do it, make that a great civic and then do social, either decentralized, centralized, or both. Okay.
Yeah, just a comment here on the remediation. So I think what we're seeing is if we're truly keeping it, right? And I guess the thing we need to take into account is, one, CCDD is still trying to get the land from the school next to us. So that's one piece. And then another thought would be, if we are to keep that building and remediate it, do we strip out the offices entirely and make it a senior center, right? That pretty much provides half of the square footage there that's used for office space. Clearly, we have to find another place for Grand Manners, but that's another possibility here as well. So I appreciate the timeline, but there's definitely a lot of moving pieces still to come before we can really take action on this. And ideally, Calic is the first one that comes to mind of how much is it going to cost, and if we are going the rebuild route, then that kind of gives us a lot of freedom in truly what we can do there.
We're going to get to a couple slides where we're going to get into a little bit more uncomfortable conversation of decision making. And I think, to Andrew, to respect what you're saying, but we've got a building that's an asset that's unusable right now. So we don't have a lot of time. There's already frustration building up. So we'll talk about what we think our next steps are, and then what we.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Okay, so next, community center. So we looked at, and I think Andrew was here who just speaking, we looked at putting a community center in different locations around town. We started with what's possible and what would be the complete function, and that's a 35,000 square foot community center, and we'll show you what that plan looks like. It can start as small as 10,000 and it can scale up. The reason we did 35,000, that's got indoor gyms, it's got a lot of things. Could that fit in Lot D? And could it fit next to, I'm not sure what you call that field next to Town Hall, the field next to Town Hall.
Yeah, no, that's not, so.
Field next to Town Hall. And so that, it fits in both places, okay? But
That's
since,
it.
okay, that's the only two places it fits in town. And so you'll see, there's only one available place right now to put that, and that's Lot D. It's the only place to build. Perhaps 3, 6, 9, 12 months, sometime in the future, you will have a choice between two places, but right now, there's only one place. And that other place has domino effects with baseball fields moving, and it gets a lot of, so there's one place, you're gonna see the recommendation here, and the footprint, and the plans, I'm gonna show you the next page. But this is scalable, it's got everything from, well, there's the plan, which that's currently the plan that sits at Lot D. If you just click it one more time. So, it's got workout facilities, it's got meetings, it's got a performance center, it's got classrooms, it's got catering facilities, and most people won't be able to read it, but to the left, in that section where Alex is moving the cursor, those are two, Mark, those are two full-size courts with a running track around it with the outside basketball court in blue. So basically, the left side of it is sport, and then the right side is classrooms, performance center, exercise. And so again, you could make this smaller. You could say, why do we need X, Y, or Z? Initially, when the discussion was putting it in the field next to the school, part of the complications of negotiation with the school where we had to put a gym in and whatever, who knows what that is. But so that's why, would you need this, all this here? To be determined, but it's possible. It's possible to put something in the size, and depending upon funding and availability and people's appetite, and you go decentralized, centralized, you can shrink. But we said, let's just put the maximum to show it's possible. There's enough parking, view the current statutes for spaces, et cetera. So, but this, we think the community has been asking for it. We think it's vital to have a community center, whether or not we go decentralized, centralized. We understand it gets complicated because it's a big expense, okay? And that it's not something like a splash pad where you can make the decision, in the next 30 days if we wanted to. This is more complicated, which is why we said, fine, but we wanted to lay out, here's what it is. Here's what we think the functions could be. And then we would love to work with you, over the next 6 months, year, whatever it takes to help progress these plans.
A few quick aspects about this one. This would be the closer to the library side of Lot D. And the parking for this is represented, but then there's another whole section of parking that's actually an addition. So it's taking the parking lot all the way up to what's there now next to the soccer field. So maximizing the parking on site so you do have more spaces still for special events and sports. And building is tucked in as close as we could to.
So Lot D is the building and the parking lot.
Lot D is actually, yes, it's
Everything's-
it's the parking lot. So you're seeing Lot D right there, the whole thing.
Yeah.
True, Lot D.
And
So it's more parking than what's needed.
The left side, very close to the gate.
so, I mentioned there were 8 of us, at times more, who spent 8 months, and everybody brought in a specific skill set on here. And then I could go through, but I'll let each one of the members speak when I'm finished. But, if I just single out for a minute, Mark, Mark has done these are not, I keep calling them architectural plans, these aren't plans, a site plan, whatever. They're very detailed. We did all, as everybody here, we gave a lot of our time, open class, to show what's possible, what meets code. And this is, every time I see one of these site plans, it's like, okay, this could work, right? And now you can take a pen and cross and add, but you'd have to have it done. And if we had to go out and hire somebody to do it, we could spend a lot of money to do, whether or not it's that work that Krista did, Marka, Joanne, and Jim with this finance experience. There was a lot of work done here that we're excited and passionate about, but there's a lot of good, and Alec with his background, there's a lot of a lot of good skill sets here that I think most of us would like to continue to work with you, as you see appropriate with us. John,
Just quick question,
Yeah.
because you mentioned the track, is that inside or outside?
that's inside,
Inside track?
inside track.
Yeah, that gym is, the same size or a little bit larger than the K-8 gym. It's the size of that.
Right.
So it's, similar.
So again, you can take it as is, do whatever.
And I think the other thing that I want to point out too, just so that I know it's a public meeting, but I know there's been some questions about, oh, we should just wait because there's going to be space in Island Village. To our knowledge, what we've been told, there is no space in Island Village for us. And it's not that Mattamy not going to give us a place of this size or scope to be able to put something out there. And so I think that unless anyone else has heard differently, yeah, the full build up does not have a hole this big
Right.
in order to fit something, like this.
Absolutely.
in here.
Open spaces, absolutely.
Yeah,
Right,
Space.
and as I said, we looked.
we looked, yeah,
There were two, and one is not for sale,
right.
available. It may, right, and something may, but right now, and between the time, a decision is made to go get building plans, to get bids, things may change. But anyway, so this we're excited about, and I think we're now going to get to, so the next 3 pages are for planning purposes only estimates. Okay, so they're preliminary planning estimates, but as many caveats are not, okay?
That's the easy part.
This easy part.
I love the disclaimer and all of
Well, I'm
it.
saying,
These are not bids.
these are not, we didn't go out to bid. When you all make the decision to proceed, you'll go out, you get architectural plans, you'll get bids, then you can make the go, no-go decision. You wouldn't make them based upon this. But if you saw a splash pad was $2 million, you'd say, you know what, I don't think the splash pad's that. So it would just give you orders of magnitude. And we think that these estimates, now again, if this is 4 years from now, they may change. But this is based upon what we think the cost would be to do these. So we talked about phase 1, which is the splash pads, the multifunction courts, and the parks enhancements. So if we look at those various projects, starting with the splash pads, thanks for that. Okay, the cost to build over $600,000, that's $75,000 site plans. You can see construction, furniture and fixtures, contingency, about 600. If you look back at the last study, it was, I think, 400,000 or 500,000 for it, but they had 2, so I'm not quite sure how they split the cost. But we think that's and again, if you said, well, we only want to spend 500,000, then there's less things, right? But this is taking that full space and doing it. And the other thing that's very important, because we may be able to fund some of these, most of these, hopefully through the capital reserves, but it's very important to ensure we get a good view as to what the annual maintenance is and what the reserves are, and reserve life. Most of these reserve lives are either 20 or 25 years. The buildings are 27 years. The rest are 20 to 25. Furniture and fixture is like 10 years. So kind of varied by line item. So it's just order of magnitude, because the annual maintenance and the reserve would have to be funded out of an ongoing budget. So it's not, as you know better than I do, it's not that's what's been paid for, and there's no expense. So we want to do that. So anyway, that's splash pads, multifunction courts, 1.25 all in. That could be less, it could be considerably less based upon some of the work that was done 2 years ago. When people were looking at just the pickleball courts there, but we added in bathrooms and some additive plumbing and supply lines out, shade, etc. So anyway, this is order of magnitude correct. And again, we think this is an important investment. Parks enhancements is a little bit more, by segments, right? I said this is for all 11. I don't have to do all 11 projects, right? Do half of them. So it would scale somewhere up to this amount. And again, some of these we recommend some of them are pretty, you know, I want to be able to talk about, we listened to the community, we did something. So we can put some shade and some technology at relatively low cost pretty quickly. We recommend doing those, you know, building perhaps you know, a playground that could take longer.
5 years?
Just give or take.
Only three.
Only 3?
I would,
It's not open yet.
You're right. You're right.
whatever, quick hitters versus impact.
Still suspect.
Have you contemplated staffing? Is there any incremental staffing cost, or would this be modeled under the current staffing? I assume the current, because splash pads probably don't need.
These would be current, just
So we don't, just
spread
not,
more.
I don't know if there's been discussions around like potential incremental needs for staffing, more people to be staffing.
So where that comes in is it's the community center, right?
So not in any of these.
Not in here, right? There was no additional. Now, because at some point there needs to be additional. You can say it's splash pads, it's just like the swimming pool, it's the kiddie pool.
Right.
But you can't keep saying that because all of a sudden then you can tell Lauren, just do this, and then this is that, right?
Right.
So I think, but on this list, no, right?
I do think that we would need to be prepared in some of these cases, especially with things like bathroom locations and different things like that, where we already just added 2 porters not that long ago because we wanted to respond back to the community. I think that we would also need to be prepared bluntly that some of these amenities would start to get used more than what they are today, which is a good problem to have. And I think that would just be something that we need to be transparent about, where it's like right now we think that, you know, yeah, we could accompany this of some of the existing staffing. But if everyone really likes the splash pad and it's being used constantly, well, guess what? We're going to need to figure out how we augment that some way. Additional staffing and on board.
Yeah. It's an excellent point, right? It's a good problem to have, is if there's increased usage, right, then, you know, maintenance costs may even go up, but that means more people are using it.
Sure.
And then the community wins on that one.
We do have a recommendation later on how to implement this. So there is labor to deliver.
Yes,
Which is
you can see that, yes, so, yeah, it's a different type of labor, thank you, yes. Okay, so phase 2, this is a little further down the road, 2027, 2030, the multi-generational center. And that's at 5,000 square feet, which got, oh no, Heritage Hall's 5,000. Multi-generation's 3,200 square feet. So, you know, it's 300 some bucks square foot plus furnitures, pictures, plus. And there you are, the multi-generational lawn sports, you can do as few, as many of those as you want. And, you know, and you know, some people say, well, why didn't you add this sport? Why didn't you add this sport? We took what we thought was an appropriate number of lawn sports to add. And some of them are fairly cheap and they're already here. Some are a little bit more complicated. And you all, again, we tried to gauge for those smaller lawn sports, level activity based upon number of people. But that's something you all have to just weigh as you make that decision. Heritage Hall, the plan to be a similar footprint to here was going to be 10,000 square feet. This assumes 5,000 square feet. If you want 10,000 square feet, you know, it's another $2 million probably. And again, I think that's a trade-off versus where we are with the centralized community center discussion.
And when we're talking about phase 2, when saying like 2027, that doesn't mean that we start talking about it in 2027. That means that we actually need to start talking about it now.
Yeah.
To be able to implement it for 2027.
Yeah, thank you. There's an annual version of this somewhere because it talks for the first ones, you know, talks, there's a 12 months process for like splash pads. I think we said 12 months. So that says if you want to have it by, you know, first quarter of 2026, you know, you got to start first quarter of 2025. And I know you're going through your budget cycles now. So again, that all has to factor in. Okay, community center. You know, I know there's been lots of discussion on that. And there it is. This is 15,000 square feet. You know, I know people keep talking 40 million, all sorts of big numbers. If you did one at 15,000 square feet, it's probably $9 million. If you do one at 30,000 square feet, it's closer to $18 million to change. Again, It all depends what you do, because it starts to get in, lots of furniture and fixtures, it gets, it's a menu, and you just, as you go through that menu, you can make this number. It probably never goes below $8 million. You won't worry about it. So that's the minimum, and it's not 40 million. I don't know if it costs 40 million, but it could cost per the plan you saw a few charts ago, it could cost 15 to 20.
Alan, can you pull it in, like, can you make those numbers bigger?
It's all, it's 9 million.
9 million, so.
9 million, now she just wanted to know the 9 million.
Yeah, now, just again,
15,000 square feet for half of what we saw previously.
right, half of it's homes. And again, in the report that you have a draft of, these are, it's full size, you can be able to see it.
You also have to consider escalation, inflation, right? So this is gonna be several years out. So right now, this is directional, and then you would have to add all that in, depending on the year that.
Right.
And is there, with something like the community center, when you start to get to a certain square footage, I'm assuming that you start to get to a point where your cost per square foot starts to drop.
Sure.
Because some of these areas, a gym, if I want it to be 5,000 square feet versus, 10,000 square feet, that I still need just more space to run around it, that sort of thing. So there's some of those places where it's not always going to be the same cost per square foot, no matter what we're looking at, correct?
Yeah.
It's not only scale, but it's what's in there.
What's in it?
So you got a
Yes.
2-story building, you don't have the second floor fit out, you've got just that second floor
Right.
running track. You have less things, in
Right.
there, right? Your cost per square for a gym, maybe, depending on the technology you put in, less than performance center, because you're gonna have audio, video, et cetera.
Sure.
Yeah, I was just gonna use that example. Performance center versus gym. The floor is expensive, but.
Yeah.
But again, each room, the classrooms and the meeting spaces, right? They're the lowest cost.
I think too, the other place where, because we're obviously talking about some very big ticket items, and I know, and I appreciate that all of you, or at least he's signing you up to saying that you're willing to still help us moving forward with this, because I think some of the pieces in this are, I don't want to make a decision on something that's going to, well, we can save $5,000 by not doing this, and we can do it later, but then if we do it later, it actually costs 15, because guess what, you're gonna break the floor to do it.
Yeah.
And so I think that some of those things where it's a reality check for the board, and talking about plans like this, there's gonna be a whole new group of people, that you're working with through this process. And I think that that's where reminding people that sometimes, even if you don't want to do the full fit out for something, and you want to say, you're gonna have a space that we're gonna build a second floor, and it's gonna kind of be empty for a couple of years, that sort of thing. That's okay. We like storage.
Yep.
But then being able to eventually be able to repurpose it to something else, I think that reminder to everyone is helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just ask we all have good questions, I agree. Can we let them finish the
There's
presentation?
not-
Make sure the time. It's not, but I don't want them to run out of time.
I got one last chart, so.
Perfect.
So this is the last chart that Alec referred to. So we are going to publish our report to you this week. Okay, you've seen a draft of it. We've got some input from that draft. Get published Thursday, Friday this week. So that's 100 report. It's very robust, a lot more detail than what's here. The question I then have for all of you is how that gets distributed to the community, but you'll have to figure that out. Okay, we were chartered by you to do a report, strategic plan. We've completed phase 1 of that, and submit that to you this week. So that's item 1. Item 2, and again, that's where experts are. So there's a group of 8 of us, starting at 11, we're down to 8. There's some good technical expertise here in different areas. Most of us would like to stay and help, but I don't know if our group officially disappears and you have to bless us to continue. I don't know what it is you need to do to allow us to continue to support you, because we would like to do that, because we have some really good skills, and we're also vested to try to kind of push things along or support you to make a decision.
Yeah,
Okay, you got, yes. Yes. Okay. The next one is, and the date may not be September 30th, but we would like for you all to, as far as town hall goes, to at least be able to communicate to the community where we are, what the timetable is, and that it may change if we have to, whatever, or at least so people know. We think there's two benefits to that. One, which is it's great so the community knows. And two, it puts a little bit of accountability in the system once we start publishing dates to adhere to those dates. And I understand, as Andrew and others point out, this is very complicated because it's new versus old, remediate, build, X amount of money, Y amount of money. It just, there's a lot of things, right? And so it's not simple. And so, but as soon as we can do that, as soon as you all can publish that out, we think that would be good. Okay, the last one, we would like, we've done this piece of work. We would like by November 15th, December 1st, you pick the date, to get your feedback to us. Okay, not your final approval, not saying, okay, we voted, just, what, splash pad's looking pretty good, this is looking, just so so there's clear communication that, gee, thanks for the report. No, we want more than thanks for the report. We're comfortable in these areas. We think this is a go. We'll do what we need to go do. So it's not final approval. Some of us wanted final approval, but some of us just said, at least if you could tell us where this current board sits as it relates to the recommendations. Okay. And then we'd like, related to that is for you all to go fund, and start working on next year, some of the phase one. Back to your point where that would start, some of that would need to start. If you say, hey, the only one we're working on next year, because it's within, we can fit it within the budget, is splash pads. Fine. We have a bigger issue over funding of the reserve account, which we'll get to as soon as I clear this chart. And the remaining projects, we're not recommending funding any projects with money that we don't have. We're not, with the exception of the community center and maybe town hall, right? Maybe town hall. So we're not saying, go, let's take out a loan to build a splash pad. Right? It has to be affordable within. Now, how we increase those reserves, different discussion, but it should be, everything here has to fit within the envelope of at least for the upfront capital investment as to the money that we all have in reserves. The last one we feel really, really strongly about, and maybe that's because many of us come from backgrounds within construction, okay, is if we are going to do some of these projects, even if we only do a few of them, even while we do town hall, listen to my business, I've been 33 years. Project managers are really important. And these are complex, and we're all part-timers, and getting a certified project manager to help drive projects, right? And there is some really good talent out there. I can tell you where there's really good talent that we could get, and I think at a very reasonable price, right? And there's some people right down the street who have a lot of people who could potentially become available to hire that person to manage, whether or not it's playgrounds or whether or not it's something more significant, right? Whether it's a part-time job or, because otherwise it's just too complicated. And that person could sit every day and just manage that project. And that's our recommendation. You will obviously do as you feel fit. And then collaborate with other groups, as appropriate, whether or not if we decide to proceed with the community center and some other group can get funding cheaper than you can or faster, whatever, fine. If not, fine. But there are other groups out there, whether or not it's the schools, whether or not it's Osceola County maybe giving us a grant to go do some work, whether or not it's, getting corporate naming rights to some of the new buildings we're doing, right? The Disney Community Center, whatever it happens to be. There are private and public entities that we think we can collaborate as we go to this exciting next phase of the history of celebration. So that is it. Thank you for your time. Questions maybe, and then I'll let the team here speak, but why don't you all go with your questions first? Question, Andrew, where's them from?
I would almost like to hear from them first.
Yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
We all put a question too.
Same as last time, so Mark.
I'm not sure what to comment on. It's definitely important, as you alluded to, getting sign process and place, get things moving. So it's a little bit of a capital outlay to get the professionals, QRPs, the design teams going on determining it. You really do need to get that project. So that it is a realistic budget. The reality is you get all these things designed and implement them. But getting the process started and having funds start those design fees. And it's critical, of course, to have right RFPs, right contracts. And getting to the right scope that you're after. I know it's hard to make up your budget when you don't even know what the program is. It's hard to actually put budget to it. So there's professionals that can help with that and work through all the steps. A few things about this with the report is there is certain things that are lacking of fitness rooms in different places, meeting rooms. So trying to spread those items out where they just simply don't exist. A couple of thoughts that weren't fully described is in Artisan, we have the amphitheater down there. Yes, adding bathrooms, but also adding a smaller meeting space that if there is a wedding or some kind of program down there, you have a place to prep that's inside air conditioned with the bathrooms that then leads down between those trees and serves that. And the bathrooms can also serve a playground that might be the other way. North Village, where that lawn sports field is, 2 bathrooms there. Right now, if you're at those set of the 2 playgrounds, there is not any bathrooms near there. You have to go all the way down to the pool. If there's bathrooms built with that, with a shaded pavilion, that's another space for families to have parties, but also bathrooms that are next to the playgrounds. Because as we all know, it's a mess when there with the kids trying to do anything without going somewhere. So providing that. Same thing with the pickleball courts. If you're at the dog park, we're in bathrooms. So if you were to build this facility, put 2 bathrooms that are on the dog park end, you suddenly have bathrooms that cover that whole section of the corridor. The thought with community center out there, that's more sports based. Everything else out there is sports based. So it kind of makes sense from that standpoint, but is it better somewhere on that school property? Maybe. The same footprint exactly fits on the lot that's across from 851 and all the parking. There's no need at all to have 851 disappear. So if the building does not go forward, there's an opportunity to use that land for something else as well. So that's still an asset there that is independent of anything that you would need to do with the community center. Other thoughts, I'm not sure I have any at this point, but obviously I can answer questions on all of this. Obviously, I'm going to continue to help advise and certainly been already involved with 851, figure out what we can do with that and get into a decision point. So yeah, I'm happy to see that moving forward. Definitely very reporting, which is good.
I think Mark and Joe pretty much covered it. So I guess I would just say it's been a pleasure working with this very talented group of individuals. I think the town got pretty lucky putting this group together and got a lot of expertise that would have cost a lot. So.
This charts and the wonderful analysis. It's all right through there.
I'll keep Mark.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This group is amazing. I did just small contribution about soccer, sports, feeding center, proposed courts, but it was wonderful how Mark put together all the thought that we had during the meetings and all the survey. It was amazing to enjoy the presentation and how Alec take care about the information and seeing John and James doing all the numbers and everything look like magical, everything fits in the right place like a puzzle. And we make it happen, so it's really good.
I have no comments. I didn't do much accounting work. I did more perspective work. I made sure a lot of the stuff made sense, you know, the younger generation, so to say. I just made sure a lot of it, you know, made sense to the community. No, I called myself young.
Okay, all right.
That's another nice part of this. Is we do have people in all different stages. So we have families, we have younger folks, we have retired folks, empty nesters. So we have the entire, a very good range of the population here represented in one group looking at it.
And we cover all the celebration.
Yeah, we're also.
Except North Village.
North Village can be done.
Yes, but yeah, I don't have more to add, but happy to answer any questions or clarification.
Well, you're the splash pad expert. My role is obviously finance and how we're gonna pay for all this. Our capital fee that we get when we sell homes is currently contributing about $470,000 a year. Out of our dues on our 2025 budget, $500,000 is coming out of our dues to help fund the capital fund. So the way to go about this is to change the capital fee on the sale of a home. Our one proposal is to go to 0.5% with a minimum of the 1 year of dues that is currently paid. And that would bring us an additional about $881,000 every year. We had different views on the finance committee. There's one that says, let's have both the buyer and the seller contribute, which raised some questions because all of this will have to go to a vote of the community. And if people thought they were going to have to pay another fee when they sell their home, would they be voting for this? And so that's a concern. But that was to increase the annual amount to 1.5 times the annual dues. And that would bring in $939,000, but now you're doing it with the seller and the buyer. And some realtors had given that suggestion because I think if the buyer fee goes up too much, it will deter people from buying. Personally, I think a 0.5% if you're buying in celebration is not going to be a significant amount that is going to make you change your mind and still do it. We have some other ideas, and other residents have come up with ideas, much higher amounts. But this is where we stand. Andrew, do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, well said. So I think it's how we look at it. Do we go the 0.5% on the buyer side and proceed accordingly? Or do we look at it more holistically as far as if we put 0.5% on the buyer side, most likely that will put some pressure on overall sale prices because they're footing the bill. But at the same time, if we're putting something out that is going to hit both the buyer and the seller, yes, we would bring in more revenue, but will the homeowners jump on board? And I look at it as if we do just 0.5% on the buyer side, then the homeowners would be paying some type of capital allocation through the budget moving forward, versus if we did the 18-month assessment on the buyer and the seller, then that would come through on the sale of the property, and we wouldn't necessarily have to increase the capital allocation as much as we would if we didn't have that. So that's more of what do we think the community would vote for? At the same time, what makes sense overall from a market perspective of selling homes in our community?
And I guess I would just say again, the sooner that the board discusses this and gets it moving, because we're going to have to go to vote of the community and get it approved, as Mr. Hudspeth will tell us. And there's another option too, which if you want to consider that you go to the 0.5
And then maybe even put in there that in 3 to 5 years, you go to 0.6. And as the community continues to grow and as the capital ideas, the buildings start to age even more, and you get that all in a boat, and that way it's set in stone that you're going to see at least some type of incremental increase in the capital fee going forward. Other than that, I very much enjoyed working with all these people and appreciate the ability to do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
So I want to start just by saying thank you to the board, right? You selected us to represent pretty daunting task.
I
That's
can
been
say
done.
something in follow-up to that.
Okay.
So, not to interrupt her, but I guess the board last year did something good because we picked this group.
Oh, we can take that off.
You want to go down?
I'm just saying, we picked a great group of people. Sorry, Alan.
No, it's okay.
I interrupted everybody.
But I think, I think you employed us with a pretty big task. So, and to Celia and Jared, you supported us the whole way through in the 8 months that we were working on this. So we appreciate that. Lots of good, healthy dialogue, right? Some disagreements, and that's okay. That's healthy for progress. As we presented our recommendations, a couple things, we presented what was possible. I think as a group, right, for many of us that are interested in continuing to help wherever we can fit, progress, not perfection, is the motto, right? I mean, we can't afford all this stuff. We can't do it all at the same time. We can't, but progress is important. We've heard from the community, as Joe noted, 20% of the community responded to the survey. That's the most that any survey has garnered from Celebration. And we saw the same recurring themes of what the community is interested in. We don't want to fall behind. We want, those that are here that were founding, residents to be able to thrive. We want new families to come in and be able to thrive with the amenities that are offered in things down 429 and other areas in the South Orlando region here. So we do think that the necessity to act swiftly and make progress, not perfection, is important for the board to consider. I also, want to employ you all. We've elected you. And so, whatever information that we presented tonight or that will come, in the coming months, take the information, digest it, healthy debate, and then let's make some decisions. Things to go back out to the community that are required to. Certainly we have to do that. But otherwise, we voted you in. You're in the spot to make decisions, and we're looking for your leadership to guide us forward. And we know that, it's up to us to put the right information in front of you to make those responsible decisions. And that's what we're, again, the talent on this group, at least, if we're, allowed the opportunity to continue. But those are that's my piece. And again, just like everybody else, this group worked. We had healthy discussion. We had disagreements. We had a lot of laughter. We were able to joke and make fun of ourselves at times. A lot of it was, Jim being from Island Village, but that's okay.
He made sure you knew that.
Yeah. But that's what made it what we believe a successful delivery is because we were able to have constructive dialogue and then come to what Joe has put together. So that's the group, and then just a standalone acknowledgement and recognition for Joe when we first kicked off, right? And Krista made the comment, she knew she was with the right group when no one wanted to be the leader. But Joe saw the gap and stepped in. And so a lot of the background work for all the things that you've seen to date and what will be published later this week was Joe and some resources that he's enlisted to assist. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you. All right. Well said by the entire team here. So I would just like to echo Alex's comments on just the need to act. I mean, if we go back and look at the 2019 strategic plan, none of the recommendations were implemented. And I'm a finance guy by trade. If you look at the market value of the residential properties in Celebration, depending upon which model you use, it's somewhere between 2.3 to $3.6 billion. Okay, I looked 4 different ways, spoke to 3 different brokers, somewhere between $2 and $3 billion. That's what we've all invested, our hard-earned money into our homes. And the community, that's, the community's got to invest. I mean, when we need, the kitchen painted, or we need a new refrigerator, we put it in. But the community, and I understand HOA fees and people don't want to know, I understand it's very complicated. You don't invest $2 to $3 billion entity over time, right? You go to sell your home. Geez, a fitness center, no. Can I go play pickleball? No. Can I? Gee, well, if you have a senior group, can I go play cards somewhere? No. It just. Plus, we just want to enjoy. It's such a great. I mean, it's a great place we live. We, if you read Facebook, you can feel negative about where we live. But if you you talk to anybody on the outside, and you talk to the people who live here, outside, it's a great place to live. So let's just invest in it. You have to make decisions. If people say, "What are we doing?" We made a decision. We made 2 decisions. We didn't say we're going to spend 40 million to 20 million. We said we're going to spend a couple of $1 million. That's a couple of million to go do something. And if we have to raise it to 0.5, by the way, it's not 0.5 incremental. I'm doing math right. They're already paying 0.25 because they're already paying the $1,300 fee. So it's only 0.25. There's no price elasticity in 0.25 in Celebration. It may be one lost home. But we have to invest. Even if there's more loss, you have to invest. It's not optional, right? If your roof is leaking, you got to invest. And this is to make our town even better than the great town it is. So I'm pleased that you entrusted us to do this important piece of work with you. And we're ready and able to do whatever else you decide you want us to do for the next period of time. Thank you.
My question, Andrew, not Andrew, Charles. I don't know why I said it. My question to us as a board is, they have a finish date, right? And they present us with the report.
I think that's a discussion for
Yeah, we need to.
Tomorrow night, okay.
Yeah.
We need to have a discussion.
Why don't we look at, we all want to give comments, maybe about.
You'll comment to do the admin stuff.
Yeah,
Sure. Can we end with Celia then?
yeah, well, I'm with all right, Andrew, do you want to go first? You're Andrew. Andrew, do you want to go first?
As far as comments?
Yeah, do you have any comments from a board perspective? We're just gonna go around the line.
Yeah, so we can start with what Celia just brought up, that I would like to keep you guys moving forward if you want to continue and have this as a standing group. So I think that's something as a board, we definitely want to keep that continuity and maybe add some pieces here or there if people decide to step back or don't want to continue on. So I definitely see that as a first standpoint. The September 30th date for the town hall remediation, I think that is overly ambitious and not going to be met. I think as a board, we can probably do end of year. Reason why I say that is because my perspective right now is that Civic Corridor, Lot B and D, as well as Town Hall is kind of off limits until we have our joint meeting with CCDD and see what Dick's Hike puts out and what they're all about, what they see for where things should be in Celebration. So that's something that I need to see and understand before we start really taking on those bigger projects. On the positive side, though, the work that you guys have done clearly shows splash pads, pickleball, and lawn sports are important. In looking at splash pads, I think the kiddie pool at Spring Park and Lakeside are pretty pathetic. So that definitely is something that we as a board can take on and probably put an RFP out sooner than later in getting the splash pads in those areas and see what that costs and get that moving. Regarding pickleball, again, with the lot B on hold as far as any future development, because I personally would like to see CCD's building out of the civic quarter and that be entirely a park. Is it something where we currently have we have 5 tennis courts down Lakeside? do we look to convert the individual tennis court to a multi-purpose or a, 4 pickleball courts in that regard to start serving that population within our community? And then lawn sports, I guess on that side, is bocce ball not played because of the location or the sport? And that's where I think your location in North Village is perfect for lawn sports, and then the other one in Spring Park makes a lot of sense as well. Are those are two areas that I would see that make the most sense for lawn sports to be located and put. And then yeah, longer term, for a playground in Artisan Park, does it make sense to be that far back with the amphitheater, or should that be closer to the clubhouse? Continue to discussion around that. Um, and then I think one thing that we truly need to fix right now is Long Meadow and what that looks like and that whole park. And is that something that needs an entire revamp regarding should that playground be at the far end of that park, or should it be closer to the actual square and centrally located? And then again, bathrooms or something else there. So a lot of great ideas. Appreciate all the work you've done. And I think one more thing for the board that we'll have further discussion on tomorrow night is the capital assessment improvement. And right now, my view is it's either the 0.5% or the 18 months on the buyer and seller. So I'll continue to think about that tonight and into tomorrow. But that is something that if we don't if we don't put out something to the community to vote on regarding a capital assessment improvement extension or increase, then we are not supporting this MPAG group and all the work they've done. So that's something as a board, we need to have a hard conversation on what we need to bring out to the community so that we can support all their great work they've done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Angela.
Oh, let's end on the impact liaison. They said the last word, honestly. First of all, honestly, I saw it the first time, I saw it the second time, and each time, it's really impressive just watching it each and every time. I think what I appreciate most is obviously the thought and the insights that you put into this. What I really appreciate is the focus on project management. Honestly, like that to me, and I think you could look at the playground, you could look at some other things that you've really been lacking in that area. And that ties into really how do you operationalize this, right? How do you actually put this into execution? And that's where, as you look at the 2019, the 2014, going all the way back, we've gotten to this point where we've never executed on this. So to me, having you all here is critical to be able to execute this vision. And frankly, with 851, we would be foolish to remove you right now as we get ready to enter into that phase. Where honestly, we need the continuity, the synergy and everything that you've developed, your expertise, all of you. So yeah, I'm totally in favor of keeping everyone together, and I'm ridiculously appreciative of everything that you've done, the hours, to this and the expertise. So thank you.
I'm team splash pad, so I think it's a no-brainer piece. I don't want to reiterate what everyone else has said. I think the biggest thing for me in this is that I would not support the board having another committee for individual projects. I think that there's some times where we've done a disservice in the past where we get into a little bit of this analysis paralysis where, well, we're going to do a splash pad. So we're going to have a splash pad committee and we're going to have something figured out and that sort of thing. We've done that. I feel very confident that this group has kind of served all of that, vetting process for us. And in some of these cases, we're going to need to go out and we want to build this thing. Great. We're going to move out and we might need to pull some people or pull some talent from places, but it's up to those of us sitting here to actually vote and move it forward. And I think that it's easier sometimes to sit back and say, well, this is what the committee recommended. I'm much more comfortable with sitting back and saying, well, MPAG recommended it, so we're going to move forward. And I think that that's the committee discussion that's all I need to hear in order to be able to support a lot of this, because anyone that hasn't been paying attention and that sort of thing, there's been an insane amount of work. I was on the board when we did the old advisory plan. We didn't do crap, afterwards. It also was 1/10 of what's been done now, because the whole part of actually how do you do this piece didn't exist. It was a lot of conceptual stuff. We said we all need these things, but no one knew how to do it. We kind of now have a plan on this is how we need to get there. And so I think that I really, I echo what Alex said when he kept going and he said, it's the board's responsibility to move this forward now, and we need to actually make a decision and do something. And I think that that includes looking at pieces such as hiring dedicated project management. We've seen success with that with the playground. You know, when we have a project manager that's able to do that, this is a really, really, really big playground. So I think that that's something that we need to look into moving forward. But I want to support and make sure that we don't get into another situation of where we think that we may need to have another group that rehashes out individual pieces of this. I think that the hashing out's been done. We just need to actually figure out what we're going to do and how to move forward.
Thank you.
Celia?
So I'm gonna echo what you said. Exactly what you said. This group needs to stay in place. Joe, you can't be leaving the country for a month at a time. You need to stay here.
Need education. So, yeah.
No, they lived it since November. It's in their head. But the splash pad was my idea in 2021.
Yes, give you credit for that.
Instead, somebody went to the movie theater, so that splash pad is embedded in my head, so thank you. Thank you for everything that you've done, and I know I pushed back but we're not rewriting what you guys did. It's here for us now, and we're gonna act on, right? Is that kind of what you said?
Yeah, that's the way.
We're not rewriting. If this is mine, and I'm not speaking on behalf of the board,
One of 7.
I'm one of 7. I don't want to redo anything else. What you came up with, we will work with. As long as we have some money to work with it. And I don't want to wait on 851 because that building needs to be fixed.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. Sorry, thank you.
I agree, and I know that when we started, Celia and I said, whatever you come up with, that's what we're gonna do, and that's what we need to do. You've done all this work for us to say, well, move this over here. You've done this, you've thought of all that. We need to just execute it. And so, just like from the beginning, I will, at the board meeting, I will add a discussion on the splash pads. We can get that started, and I will add a discussion on the committee for the master planning group so that we can have that moving forward and going forward. I think the most important thing for the community to know is that we would not have gotten a better master plan if we had paid an outside consultant than what we had.
I agree.
Yep, we have.
I've had a lot of airplane time and I read all 104 pages. And we may have gotten it faster, but it would not have been better by any means.
Thank you.
So thank you all very, very much. I'm so appreciative to what you've done. You've really made this easy for us because we just need to follow what's been put forward.
So I have one more question to Lauren, and I know she's gonna kill me with this. Can I get a paper copy of that, their 120 page?
It's already printed for you.
So black and white's fine.
I do think one of the questions, and I'll open this up to Lauren and Jacob, I think you have special expertise with the history that you've had here. Welcome back to ours. But there are pieces in this that I do think that we will need to have honest feedback from management on. We know that the service level that's assumed for a building of this size is X, but our residents accept, want double X of that. And I think that we need to be, I mean, we've seen that, I keep bringing up the quarters over and over again, but having a trash can that's half full, it's not acceptable to a lot of people. And so we need to address that sort of thing. I think we're going to see that in a lot of these, a lot of these items that we're before here, where I think that we'll need to have an honest dialogue with that, because what I don't want to have happen is an investment made in a facility or an investment made in something and it fails due to, and we didn't operationalize it appropriately, like we didn't staff it appropriately, or we didn't consider that we needed something. And so I think that that's something where if we need to, if you look at this and you say, this is great, but we are absolutely going to have X number of people that do this. We need to just have that discussion and hash it out in the beginning. rather than us get into the deployment stage and say, well, it's not working that well because we really needed more people to help manage it or something like that.
I can just tack on to the port number, because we looked at them specifically as part of this budget process. We took the average square footage that a individual could clean per hour and looked at what your existing square footage was for amenity space that those ladies clean every day. They are currently maxed out. So if we add square feet for them to clean, then you're going to need to start adding additional bodies. Like they're almost perfectly at 40 hours a week per person. And that's not really including the pool decks, which they do help out with.
Sure.
I mean, just on that small scale alone, that's already additional bodies if you're adding a square footage for them to clean.
And if I just add, that would all be discussed by the finance committee.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we would go through that.
It's just some of those optics. When I was with Cummins, I managed 5 different conference centers. Every time we added a conference center, there's things you have to consider, just like adding a bathroom here or there. Every time you add a bathroom, you have to consider, we have to now every day visit that bathroom 3 to 7 times by different team members. So 3 to 7 visits, you could almost look at that as 4 hours to 6 hours per location. If you look at staffing a security guard 4 to 7 hours a day, when you look at the budget for the year on that, it's it gets really big. Every time you add a door that needs locked or unlocked and it needs maintenance, that's something that really should be considered. Every meeting room, every setup takes it takes an hour to set up, a half hour to tear down. Just making sure that there's that option, that staffing number in there. And then where do you hold the staff? Because our current situation, we're about 20% square foot of office space of where we were.
Right. And I think too, the other piece of this is that there's going to be opportunity with some of these larger facilities. I mean, I think Artisan Park has done a good job, in my opinion, and I live in Artisan Park, so I'll put that out there now. But I think that they've done a good job of being able to balance rental income with being able for facility usage and understanding that. Putting some of these things into place, it does open up the question of rental income with different things like that. Now, that does add to not only the cleanliness and maintenance and repair and all that sort of stuff, and wear and tear on the facility, but then we do need to look at, there's gonna need to be staff that's gonna be able to support getting interest in rentals and being able to actually process those things. So I think that as we look, if we get creative with some of the space and that sort of thing and what we're gonna do, I think we need to lean on all the mind power in this room to figure out how do we actually put that into place and put it into practice, because we could get creative. I mean, naming a building, is a good thing, but we need to go out and find someone that is willing to talk to us and is comfortable having those conversations, because it's a fun skill set.
We name everything down to the urinal as far as I'm.
Oh, yeah, everything.
You could pay for that.
We'll put a plaque on everything, yeah.
So I do think one nice thing in the way they set this up is designating civic versus rec versus
Yes.
social.
Yes.
Because that, from the current Parks and Rec team standpoint, that's one of the biggest time consumptions for them, is setting up and tearing down rooms and flipping them for different uses. If town hall is specifically business, we're running board meetings and committee meetings out of there, and I'm not having taekwondo next door, then, they're not setting up those 3 or 4 rooms 3 times a day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's one, it's kudos to the group. And so I think that is one benefit in the way they lay this out.
As well as that they considered the maintenance.
Yeah.
Of the, budgeting for the maintenance.
Yeah, and when we looked at the budgeting, I mean, the readers, they break. It's somehow, and once a month, somebody's gonna have to make a service call because it's not working. And much like we see currently, it happens. You can get the best guy putting him in, right? No flags, right? So you just gotta look at all those, factors. And again, it's just a sheet. And you're gonna have 50 items on the sheet, and you're gonna put it once a month. Lauren's gonna say, no, it's once a quarter. You're gonna say it's once a week, fine. And then you build it out. And then there's not a surprise. You may not like the price tag, but it's not a surprise.
Sure.
And it's gotta be detailed.
So I think as a board, the next steps, we've got some discussion items that we'll add. Do we need to have a motion to release the final report, or is that just, can we just release it? With the report? What's the?
It's a notice board meeting, right now? I'll make the motion that we direct management to release the findings of the report in a manner that they seem fit.
Are we allowed to do this?
Why not?
An action on the agenda.
Oh, why?
We don't have.
It's a notice.
You have a quorum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then we were gonna talk.
Laura, what do you
I think
think?
we should give
Yes.
us direction then.
I would just consensus that you're giving us direction. Once we get the final report from the group, that we will issue it,
Right, so that's.
to the community.
Yes, everyone good?
I think, but to Jared's point, though, I do think that there needs to be, bluntly, not everyone is going to sit and read all 100 and whatever odd pages of it. I think that there, yeah. I do think that we may need to get creative in the communication plan for this. And things like, we may tap people on this committee to record a 90-second video explaining why the hell you want to build a splash pad, or why we wanted to put lawn sports at North Village. Making things easily digestible for people to be able to understand the reasoning behind it, rather than them having to read a report. I mean, people are inherently lazy, it's much easier for them to digest it in those manners. And I think that that's where we would need to frankly come up with a little bit of a communication plan.
Well, we have a communication.
I was gonna say-
Yeah, I was gonna say, why don't we get this
They've got,
group together with the comms group and they can come up with a plan. on
So I think,
that.
that's like two things. One, the report's 103, 104 pages. The executive resident summary is with pictures and diagrams is 22 pages.
Sure.
And it's large font. So it's actually about a 15-minute read, which is still a long read. But there's a resident summary up front, and you can stop reading it after page 8 or 9 and kind of get the gist.
Would it be
So-
possible to just split it? So we have one that's just the short version and then one that has the full length version.
Yeah.
I can split the PDF up, yeah.
And can we just post both of those on the MPAG part of the website and
Yeah, well,
Do you
And
want
then-
a PowerPoint up there too?
let's review.
email to the, I'll point to them to that?
Yeah.
I'm not excited about splitting it. It's a logical flow, but let's just, I think the
Oh, I
point,
just meant take that first resident summary out as a separate thing, but then still keep it all together too as the full page.
I think
So have, like,
we're all okay with however you want to.
Okay.
Digestible piece.
I think you
but I think Eric raised a good point. It's part of the education process. Okay, that won't get done this week. It's pick the phase 1 projects.
Yes.
And do we could take the 3 or 4 charts that talk about the splash pad and have a voiceover that just says, okay, let me tell you a little bit about, you want to know about splash pads, why we're doing splash pads, whatever. I think we can do that. I think that's a great.
Roscoe is still
Yeah,
around.
and I,
He is available.
the other piece of this too is that I'm good with this going to the communications committee, but we need to put a deadline against it. And we need to make sure that so I think let's figure that out for tomorrow for discussion, that we need to put a time frame on getting this out to the community. Because I think the other piece in this is that this presentation is rock star. And I think that it will help us sell any sort of financial implication that we're then pitching to the community. So if we come back with whatever we decide on some sort of, percentage or whatever we want to find. If someone says, we just want to raise my dues because you want to raise my dues and we're going to do this capital assessment because you guys want more money. Well, they're not, no one's going to go for that. But if we then turn around and say, we're trying to do this because we're trying to support all of these things. And if we do this, then we think that it will actually, we'll have funding to be able to do a lot of these things. That is a different decision process. So it's kind of selling it to the community on why we want to do that. And to Jim's point, we need to do that sooner rather than later, because it's going to have to go out for a vote. No matter.
And increasing the capital fund, the argument is also getting dues down.
Yes, exactly.
So if the board's comfortable, would you guys be fine with giving them 1 page of our monthly celebration magazine to be dedicated just to what their findings and report are?
I don't know if we can do that.
Well, we're starting the September one now, so I'll work with the publisher to find like a full page and we can pull somebody else's full page article.
And if we can, we've seen the report as the board, so when they are ready to share it to us, I think it can be shared on the website and then.
Yeah.
Yes, there's all this easily digestible stuff to come, but just getting it out so that it's available, everybody's, let them
Yeah.
have the report.
Yeah, we'll issue it as soon as we get it.
Yeah, makes sense.
We're on good to next steps. Anything else you need from us?
Sections.
Anything we?
Good.
Thank you all very much.
One final question
Same.
for the advisory group. Did you guys, were you guys in agreement with the 0.5% on the sale price for the capital assessment?
Major's nailing you down on it now.
Yeah, I think,
Different opinions.
I think we have different, but the report currently says such as 0.5. In it, I don't
I
think
think
we
we talked
took
about
it,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
what's that?
Jim shared it the other night, but we haven't
We haven't,
discussed it and debated.
So no opinion this time.
we don't have.
It's gotta be something.
We all agree it's gotta be something.
Yeah.
Right, and then I think we didn't get a consensus because we just didn't discuss it, as opposed to we discussed it, couldn't agree.
Yeah.
Right, I think we all have our individual opinions, do you pay for the people coming in, or the people leaving, who should pay for it?
So there's no consensus there, Andrew.
Well, it hasn't been,
We haven't discussed
we haven't discussed.
it. We don't have it.
If you'd like us, if that's a thing, we can meet and discuss it and come back to you.
Mine is still. You're still.
We had a large discussion today, even though we had an hour meeting on this. Sided pretty much with the 0.5%, although there was some discussion, like Andrew said, about getting the seller involved. But again, my research on that is nothing in the statute prohibits that. But every capital fee mentioned is on the buyer. So if we go that route, we're gonna have to have some legal. research
So I'll
on it.
phrase it this way for the advisory group then. If we were to proceed with a 0.5% on sale price, would there be any dissent from this group?
I don't think we can answer that because we haven't discussed it as a group.
But.
So if you're
Andrew,
asking
can you
us as
repeat
a
your
group,
question?
give an opinion, we can't. because we
Well,
haven't
he's asking for
discussed it.
individual, get that, but we did discuss this as a group.
Yeah.
So.
No answer.
Sounds good.
Anything else?
Well, it's fine. So I second your motion to adjourn.
Okay, that's it.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You guys are.